Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place that helps you navigate really complex source material and pull out the key insights.
And today, we're definitely diving deep. We're looking at sources on the Nation of Islam, the NOI.
Yeah, an organization that I think it's fair to say is often seen through a pretty narrow lens, maybe just headlines or politics.
Right, and if that's all you've seen, you're kind of missing the core of what our sources show. It's not just a political movement, it's this incredibly detailed religious cosmology.
Yeah.
Very unique.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this deep dive. Get past the surface noise and really understand the foundational doctrine. We're focusing on how the NOI used theology, ritual, and some, frankly, pretty wild celestial myths to redefine the black body itself.
That's the key concept we need to frame this, black embodiment. You see, figures like Elijah Muhammad, they weren't just trying to critique society. They aimed to totally dismantle what they saw as the in-place black body.
Okay, what do you mean by in place?
The body that was, compliant with white supremacy, maybe Christianized, seen as psychologically weaker, sort of accepting its designated place.
And the goal was to replace it with
The out-of-place body. A body that was deliberately constructed to be seen as dangerous, powerful, even transcendent, filled with this cosmic metaphysical weight. It just refused to fit the existing racial hierarchy.
So a complete rebuild from like how the universe started all the way down to your diet.
Exactly, from cosmic myths to daily life. And we'll trace how leaders from Elijah Muhammad right up to Louis Farrakhan use this idea, blending these really radical interstellar stories with super practical everyday rules.
Okay, let's start at the foundation. Elijah Muhammad. His critique of the whitenized black body seems central.
It absolutely is. He saw African Americans who'd internalized white norms, especially through Christianity, which he called a sanitizing ideology as well. Damaged, aesthetically wrong, psychologically weak, even religiously sort of demonic. This was his answer to the constant pressure and violence of white supremacy, things like the lynchings he'd witnessed.
And to explain that suffering, to give it meaning what philosophers call a theodicy, he introduced this amazing story, the Yakub myth.
Crucial. And you have to understand, this wasn't taught as just a story or a metaphor, not at first. It was presented as the literal history and science of the entire universe.
Wow. So how does it start?
It starts 76 trillion years ago with God, or Allah, self-creating from an original atom. And right there, divinity itself is established as black.
That timeline alone just completely blows up Western Christian ideas of creation.
Totally. Then the myth jumps forward to 6,000 years ago. There's this brilliant but disgruntled black scientist named Yakub.
A renegade scientist.
Yes, and he decides he's going to create a new race through genetic engineering, essentially. It's described as a 600-year process of grafting, selectively breeding to remove the darker trait.
The result of this experiment.
The result, according to the myth, is the white race, defined by pale white skin and really blue eyes. And importantly, this race is seen as the peak of physical and moral corruption.
So he completely flips the script. Instead of blackness being a curse or inferior, it's the divine original. And whiteness is this later flawed creation by a black scientist gone rogue.
Exactly. It's a radical reversal of centuries of racist theology. And it gets even broader because Muhammad didn't just limit blackness to people of African descent.
Right, you mentioned this transcendent blackness.
Yeah, he saw it as this huge, almost cosmic racial category. It included Native Americans, Asians, Latinos, suggesting this vast, even interstellar origin for black peoples. He literally taught there was life on Mars, black people who lived longer, grew larger.
Interstellar origins.
Superior beings explicitly contrasted with whites who were seen as limited, just stuck here on Earth.
Which brings us, I guess, to the ultimate symbol of all this, the mothership, or the mother wheel.
The mother wheel, yes. And incredibly, Muhammad derived this idea directly from the Bible. He read Ezekiel's vision of a wheel within a wheel, not as a metaphor, but as a literal prophecy of this craft.
And how did he describe it?
As a huge, small planet, half a mile by half a mile. He called it the most technological and scientific creation in the history of the cosmos.
Half a mile wide. Basically a flying city.
Yeah.
Built by black ingenuity.
Right. And it's not just symbolic, it's a weapon. It carries 1,500 smaller planes. It's proof, undeniable proof in his teaching of this hidden black genius that white society had suppressed. It's the physical manifestation of divine black power.
Okay, the symbolic framework is immense. A black god, cosmic origins, a half-mile wide mothership. But how do you bring that down to Earth? How do you make that real in people's everyday lives.
Right, that's the shift to what we call the exoteric praxis, the everyday stuff. The NOI built these ideal bodies through really strict social controls. The goal was bodies that were healthier, purer, and visually distinct from those in-place black bodies Muhammad criticized.
And step one seems to be controlling the body through food, those dietary codes in how to eat to live.
Super detailed, super strict. It served two goals. Health, obviously, but also separation. They banned foods often called slave foods.
Like pork.
Pork, yeah, called swine, described as an unnatural, grafted animal. But also things like collard greens, black-eyed peas, sweet potatoes, foods associated with the past they were rejecting.
And the most striking rule.
The mandate to eat only one meal a day, that was a must for serious followers.
And one meal a day. That's intense discipline. Why specifically that?
It was about building almost military-level self-control, rejecting what Muhammad saw as the laziness and overconsumption tied to the degraded body in white culture. It kept members in this constant state of heightened self-discipline, physically and morally elevating the body.
Okay, beyond diet, there's the renaming. That's probably the most famous ritual.
Absolutely critical. Members dropped their last names, the names given by slave masters, and replaced them with X. Malcolm X, Louis X.
What do the X mean?
It symbolized the unknown, the lost, true, authentic name from their original cosmic heritage. It was a public declaration. This body, this identity, it doesn't belong to white culture anymore. The sources even credit Muhammad Ali's boxing success, partly to the power he got from shedding his white man's name, Cassius Clay.
This focus on discipline, it was also very sharply divided by gender, right, through these separate groups.
Very much so. For men, you had the fruit of Islam, the FOI. Their training was all about martial arts, security, precision drills, building physical strength, discipline, a very specific kind of assertive masculinity.
And for women.
The Muslim girls' training in General Course in Civilization, or MGTGCC, and its focus was, well, quite different.
How so?
It centered heavily on domesticity, cooking, raising children, maintaining meticulously clean homes. There were also very strict rules about modesty, mandatory head coverings, no makeup, no revealing clothing.
So reinforcing a pretty traditional gender hierarchy.
Absolutely. The idea was to protect and regulate the woman's body, seeing it as crucial for the nation's moral standing, but definitely under male authority. It reflected this concern that black women's bodies needed extra moral policing.
And this strict framework didn't allow for much deviation, it seems.
No. Muhammad condemned homosexuality quite forcefully, calling it filthy. He saw it as just another sign of the undisciplined, chaotic freedom of America that he wanted his followers to escape. The whole system was aimed at producing these ideal, highly regulated male and female bodies for the new black nation.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Talk about the figures who came after or alongside Muhammad. Malcolm X is obviously huge here. He seems to represent a bit of a pivot.
A major pivot. If Muhammad prioritized the symbolic, the myths, the mothership, the internal discipline, Malcolm really focused on the social. He was out there, deeply engaged in the reality of urban racism.
So he took the message public.
Aggressively. Mass proselytism. Powerful speeches, using language as a weapon. He forced the black body to become out of place socially, right in the face of white America. He craved, actual bodily engagement in the struggle, maybe more than Muhammad's symbolic critique.
He sort of weaponized the internal critique and aimed it outwards.
You could say that. He was maybe the sharp edge while Muhammad was the architect. And Malcolm was relentless against black Christians. He famously called them house and yard Negroes, puppets.
Believing Christianity was used to control black people.
Fundamentally, he saw it as engineered specifically to brainwash the black man, to keep them subservient.
Okay, then after Elijah Muhammad dies in 1975, his son, Warith Deen Mohammed, takes over. And things change again, drastically. This period sometimes gets overlooked.
It's really crucial, though. It's when the organization tries to shift from being seen as, well, a unique racial movement towards something closer to global Islam. W.D. Mohammed steered it much closer to mainstream Sunni practices.
But he kept the focus on identity.
He did, but he tried to de-eschatologize things. That's a bit of jargon, but it means stripping away the literal end-of-the-world cosmic battle stuff, like the mothership coming to destroy the white race.
So how did he reinterpret things like the Yakub myth?
Symbolically, the body wasn't just physical anymore. It became a metaphor for society. He'd say things like, the anatomy of society should be the anatomy of the human being. Making the body whole meant making society just. It was a much more abstract intellectual approach.
And he tried to change the name people used for themselves.
Yeah, he proposed Bilalians. It was an attempt to find a new identity marker rooted in Islamic history, not just race or geography. Bilal ibn Rabah, the first prayer caller in Islam, was an African former slave. So Muhammad saw that name as representing dignity, history, culture, something universally Islamic, moving beyond just black.
A real attempt to bridge the NOI's unique origins with global Islam. Okay, now let's bring it to Louis Farrakhan. He basically revives the original radical teachings.
He absolutely does. And Farrakhan is fascinating because he fully merges Malcolm X's social combativeness with Elijah Muhammad's deep symbolic cosmology. And the key to understanding him is, again, the mothership.
But in a very personal way for him, right? His abduction claim.
Exactly. His entire ministry, its authority, its direction really hinges on his claim that on September 17th, 1985, he was physically taken aboard a UFO, which he identifies as the Mother Wheel, while he was on Teposteco Mountain in Mexico.
This isn't just a story he tells. It's like his core organizing principle. What did he say happened inside?
He describes being taken inside the wheel and Elijah Muhammad communicating with him, not by speaking, but through a written scroll projected directly onto his mind.
Projected onto his mind. What was the message?
A political assignment. He was told to go announce President Reagan's secret plans for war and to explicitly state that the information came from Muhammad on the wheel.
So the NOI, through the wheel, has access to high-level geopolitical secrets. That's the claim. And Farrakhan believes all UFO sightings are basically the mother wheel.
Yes. He interprets them as just misrecognized glimpses of this superior black technology, proof of their divine protection. But this vision, this experience, also does something really profound with gender symbolism.
How so?
Well, the ship itself is gendered feminine. It's the mothership, the mother wheel, carrying baby wheels.
Yeah.
And Farrakhan describes being inside the wheel almost like being inside a womb,
A cosmic wound.
from which he says he was reborn as someone profoundly significant. It's his spiritual rebirth linked directly to this feminine cosmic vessel.
But what does that mean for actual women in the NOI who are already under the strict MGTGCC rules?
That's the tension. It leads to what some scholars call a metaphysical reduction of black women's bodies, primarily to their function as wombs. Their physical bodies become these sacred spaces, but mainly for reproducing the nation specifically, reproducing men who reflect the divine potential. So Farrakhan uses this cosmic mothership as womb idea to reinforce a very traditional earthbound gender hierarchy.
Wow. So they're fighting external racism with this incredibly radical interstellar theology.
But then using that same theology to justify internal policing and a fairly rigid hierarchy, especially around gender, that's the paradox right at the heart of it.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this. The NOI project was undeniably powerful in some ways.
Absolutely. It was a deeply subversive counter-narrative to white supremacy. It created these potent, transcendent identities rooted in black divinity. It definitely elevated the status and self-perception of the black body for its followers, no question.
But the sources also highlight these internal struggles, particularly around class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
While fighting external oppression, the NOI, especially under Muhammad, kind of reproduced its own internal hierarchies. You could almost map it onto sociological theories, like Bourdieu's ideas of distinction. They created an internal ideal black embodied economy.
Meaning certain bodies were valued more.
Right. Bodies that were Muslim, male, masculine, fit, sometimes lighter complexion, educated, middle class. These tended to be implicitly or explicitly valued more within the movement's own status system.
So turning racial issues into internal class distinctions.
In a way, yes. By promoting and rewarding bodies that fit this ideal type, the NOI ended up policing itself, converting some aspects of the struggle against racism into a matter of internal class and status differentiation. The ultimate power wasn't just being black and Muslim, it was being the right kind of disciplined, regulated black Muslim body.
That tension between the radical external critique and cosmology and the strict internal social control seems to be the thread running through this whole history.
It really is. And that brings us to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on. The NOI built its entire identity on these interstellar origins, life on Mars, the mother plane, superior black intellect from the cosmos.
Right.
Now, fast forward. In 2021, the U.S. government itself formally acknowledges unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, UFOs, whatever you want to call them. Think about how the NOI's long-standing theology prepared its followers for that moment.
They already had a framework. They weren't starting from scratch trying to understand it.
Precisely. For them, these UAP reports aren't necessarily about unknown aliens or a potential threat. They can be interpreted as tangible proof of what they've believed all along. Evidence of their own black genius, their suppressed technological heritage, maybe even their divine protection arriving.
It gives them a completely different pre-existing lens to view what for many is a new and unsettling mystery.
Exactly. A unique theological narrative ready-made for a modern phenomenon.
That's a fascinating place to leave it. Thank you for unpacking all of that with us today.
My pleasure. Always fascinating material.